Patrick's Landing by Marie D. Henry, copyrighted 2010, Chapter 2, Episode 7. It seemed to Oswald that he had been in bed for hours, with his thoughts keeping him awake. But when he lit a match from the box on his bedside table and checked the time, it was only midnight. He blew out the flickering flame and tested the match head between his thumb and fingers before placing it in the ashtray near the clock. His thoughts went back to how he had met Rita. At the memory of her, his heartbeats quickened and his arms longed to hold her. His body burned for the time when he would make her his own. He smiled at the memory of the event that had led to all this change in his life. In the fall, he had decided not to go to work cutting logs for the Bathurst Lumber Company, as he had done the previous 3 winters, because his father's health was failing and he did not want to leave his mother with all the work at home. However, she had assured him that she could handle it with the help of his younger siblings. She had insisted he apply for the winter's logging work. He had been disappointed because spending winters in a logging camp was not the most pleasant of experiences. He had hoped, with his father's failing health, that he could stay home where the beds were clean and his mother's cooking the best anyone would want to taste. But despite his arguments, she had won, and off to the logging camp he went for the winter. He grimaced at the thought that she might have agreed with him and he had stayed home. As he lay staring into the darkness, he felt ever so glad he had listened to her advice. And now, if David agreed to the deal he planned to offer him for the 50 acres, the logging camps would never again be part of his life. He was sure of that. His thoughts took him back to the winter past and the events that led up to the present. He had sat on his bunk quietly listening to the talk of the men around him as he thought about his ailing father and hard-working mother and his younger siblings at home. He wondered how they were faring in the wild storm that raged outside of the bunkhouse and over the rest of the province. He knew that the snow would be swirling just as wildly in the wind around his parents' home in the little clearing in the new settlement of Patrick's Landing, just 15 miles inland from the Atlantic Ocean. The wind would be worse there because the virgin forest was no longer standing to protect the house. The trees had been cut down for lumber to build a house and barn and to clear the fields for growing crops. While in the depths of the forest, where the lumber camp was, the woods protected them from the storm's fury. He worried that the house he had helped build would not hold up in the storm. It was a sturdy home, but in the open as it was, the wind would be hitting it full force. It would be warm though, because they now had 2 stoves to heat it. There was the cooking range stove in the kitchen and the big heater in the parlor. And they had lots of wood for both of them stored in the woodshed right outside of the back door.